Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Musician's Mentor podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Travis Mark, and I'm super stoked to announce that my guest today is musical genius, at least in my opinion, Gabrial McNair. Gabrial McNair is a musical director, a trombonist, a keys player, a backing vocalist. He's basically a jack of all trades. He's the kind of guy you want to put in your band and he will do something that will make things sound musically how they should sound. Many of you may know Gabriel from his work with multi-platinum selling band No Doubts. He also tours with Gwen Stefani and Sublime With Rome. He's worked with the Offspring, Green Day, and an array of others. He does composition work and production work, and I strongly suggest you check out his own project, Oslo, as well. As usual, if you're enjoying these episodes, please leave us a rating or review. Or in addition, share them with your like-minded musical friends. I do want to note that around the 21-minute mark, while we're talking about music education, I did lose audio for a couple seconds. To fill you in here, Gabriel's talking about how he got involved in some jazz camps and got more down that sort of path. It does make sense once you understand that. I'm not sure why that happened, and I do apologize. Nonetheless, let's jump straight into this. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Gabrial McNair. Gabrial McNair. Dude, I am so happy to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about so much and hopefully even more. I know a lot about you. I've been a fan of you and the projects you've been involved in for quite a while. And I don't know if you've listened to any episodes of the podcast. I don't expect that to have happened. But typically what I tend to do is I ask my guests to do a brief introduction on themselves. So if you wouldn't mind, tell the world who Gabrial McNair is.
It's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Gabrial McNair. I'm a multi-instrumentalist. And primarily a touring musician. I work with No Doubt, Gwen Stefani, Sublime With Rome, and I have worked with other bands like Green Day, Smashing Pumpkins, Tegan and Sarah, and various that are not coming to my mind right now. Forgive me. And I also have my own band called Oslo, and I also am a semi-part-time film and TV composer as well.
Amazing. And, you know, we're going to dissect, hopefully, quite a lot of that. I'm going to backtrack first just to kind of make this make a little bit of, I guess you could say, chronological sense. So now, in doing my research and trying to come up with questions for things that I wanted to ask you, Gabriel, I saw that you initially played in your high school marching band before eventually attending Citrus and then California Institute of Arts, etc., etc., etc. Before we jump into musical studies, I was wondering, could you tell me how you got into music in general? How old were you? What was your musical background? Were any other family members playing music? What was the bug that bit?
My father was not a musician. He did play the tuba in high school, but he was a music fan, primarily classical music. And when I was, 3 or younger, as my siblings would probably say, my dad would show me a lot of, we would watch public television, PBS, and they would show, clips of orchestra playing, and you'd see the conductor waving his hands, and so stand on the bed and wave my hands like I was a conductor when my dad would play music. And so I got introduced to Chopin and Beethoven and Bach and Mozart and Brahms and all these other composers when I was 3-4 years old. by the time I started, when I was in the fourth grade, my elementary school, I went to public school, and back then they had music programs in the school. I'm very lucky to have been a part of that. So when the music teachers came through our classroom and brought all these instruments, they would, ask us, who knows what this is? And my hand would shoot up, and I knew exactly what all the instruments were, what they sounded like. And then they were having signups for the orchestra. And my mother had a violin. She used to play violin when she was younger, and she kept hers. She was, a kid when she played it, so she hadn't really touched it in a while. But we had a violin in the house, and fourth graders were only allowed to play stringed instruments. Yeah. So my fourth grade year, I played violin, and in the fifth grade, I switched to the trombone. So that's kind of the beginning of it. And then, of course, I had music from my older siblings that they would play in the house. And each sibling had their own thing that they listened to. We listened, it was very diverse. There was, other than classical, we had funk, we had rock, R&B. We listened to all kinds of stuff, Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind and Fire, Devo, Styx, Steely Dan, Doobie Brothers. Like, there was a lot of weird and good stuff going on, and of course everything around us that was being played on the radio and whatnot. So it was just around me. And then once the opportunity came for me to be a part of this sound, I just jumped at it immediately.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, usually when you talk to people about like what they were listening to and stuff like that, they'll discover a love of a genre or a certain band and kind of go from there. And you can almost see the similarities between I was listening to this and it led me to that kind of thing. But just the band names you mentioned there, away from classical music and orchestra stuff, that's a real diverse array of colors you're painting with there. It's super cool.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, I mentioned the California Institute of Arts and Citrus and stuff like that. We're going to jump back there for a sec, and then we'll get more into the band stuff, the nitty-gritty stuff that I love to talk about. But this is really just so any listeners have more of an idea of, oh, okay, yeah, I totally get this guy's vibe, So jumping back to music studies, I saw that you studied composition and jazz, and before we hit record, you were telling me you did a bit of composing for some film stuff. Talk to me a little bit about your music education experience, and possibly a little bit of a redundant question, but tell me your thoughts on how important, if at all, you feel music education is for up-and-coming musicians, especially in a world where we are so easily exposed to, I suppose, what we could consider nuggets of music education. I don't know if I'm blurring that question by saying that, but what I mean is, there's obviously the old way of going to a music institute and studying music that way, but we also have so much now with the advent of the internet and that kind of thing that a lot of just incredible musicians don't attend or ever go to these places, and they've learnt from watching said clip here and said video there. It's all apples and oranges, but what are your thoughts on the importance of music education?
Well, this is a very good question. So having been brought up in an educational environment, my first career desire was to be an educator. I wanted to be a band director that was the only job that I saw that you could do with this. I was a bit naive. I didn't realize that people who played in orchestras were doing it for money. I just thought, okay, well, they're doing it, and I guess I just never thought about it. I didn't really think of it as a job, because the job is something you don't really like to do. And I'm thinking to myself after I realized, I'm like, wow, like these people play music. That's how they make their money.
Yeah.
I was quite young. So when I got to when I got into high school, we had a different band director when I was a freshman. When I was a sophomore, the band director that came in, he had dipped his toes into the professional world, and he kind of had been around the scene a little bit. So he gave a bit of insight onto how things work. He told us, you got to get really good at sight reading. And he would explain to us that, session musicians, they show up in the studio and they have no idea what they're going to play. They show up, they sit down, and there's sheet music on their stand, and they kind of page through it. They look through it and they go, okay. And then the engineer gets some sounds, makes sure the levels are good. And then bam, they start recording. And, when you're at that level in high school, we're used to rehearsing. We go through weeks and months of rehearsals, and then comes the big performance, But these guys, they're looking at the music, and some of them, they're looking at it for the very first time as they are playing it. They're reading it just as though someone's reading a poem. And I said, wait, and I was a little confused. I was like, so wait, they walk into the studio and they have no idea what they're going to do? He goes, no, they don't know. And I was like, wow. He said, that's why it's very important to get really good at reading. So all of this excited me, and actually he was a trombone player, me and him had a cool rapport and worked together really well. And my last semester of high school, I had to show up early for zero period. They had a zero period, which started before the main school started, and I think I had English, and then I had government, and then second period. He started a wind ensemble, which was just one player to a part. It was all the top musicians from the concert band. And then I didn't have a third or fourth period. I had it open. I had to get all this approved through the school district and whatnot. And on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I got to go to the community college. I went to Citrus College, and then I played in their jazz band. And then I would come back, and fifth period, I had jazz band at the high school. And then sixth period, I played concert band. And then, for a few weeks there, I actually played the tenor saxophone because I had been wanting to try tenor saxophone. And, so that was kind of fun. But anyways, going back on Tuesdays and Thursdays, me and my high school band director, he played trombone, and he wanted to start playing a little bit more again because he was so involved with education. He hadn't really played very much. And so we would read down duets together, so anyways, when I got to college, actually it was my I was going into my senior year in high school, and there were two community colleges in the area, and I knew I wasn't going to go to a university because I just couldn't afford it. There was no chance. And so 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, 5 woodwinds, rhythm section, and the teacher was a sax player. They were awesome. Sounded, really good to us, And then Citrus College brought their band, and it was a much smaller, condensed. They called it a lab band, and there were, some people that were a little older in the group, and they were playing this more electronic stuff called fusion, and I was kind of the other band was they were pretty banging, but this is okay, whatever. So anyway, he was talking to us, and he was pretty cool, and he told us that he was going to be having a jazz camp at that school during the summer, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Well, whatever it is, I'm sure I won't be able to afford it. And he said, and it's free, and I was like, free? I was like, I'm there. So I went. And I went, and he taught us about how to read chord changes, and we learned some very, very basic stuff about jazz improvisation. Because, I played in the jazz band in high school, and I didn't really understand. I mean, I understood D minor 7, but I didn't really know what that meant. I knew it was a D minor chord, and I think the 7 had to do with the 7th scale degree but it didn't really, I didn't understand its function and how it all worked. But this guy, he explained it all, and I had a better understanding. And so I would go there every week. And then one day I was playing a solo, and he was watching me, and he goes, "Who are you studying with?" And I was like, I've never taken lessons before. And he looks at me and he goes, "We should sit down." Now, he was a trumpet player. His name was Bob Slack. He goes, "We should sit down sometime." And I'm like, okay, this is going to be expensive. I was like, okay, whatever, dude. So yeah, I don't know, a week later, he goes, "Why don't you come by early, next week and we'll sit down." And I was like, all right. And I said, "Hey, I don't have money to pay you for a lesson, so we'll have to try to work something out. I mean, I don't know, I'll come by and wash your car or something." And he was like, "Oh, he's like, we'll work it out later. Don't worry about that." And I was like, okay. He had plans.
Writing it all down in a little book.
So we sat down. Yeah. He had plans. So we sat down, and he gave me my first lesson on the trombone. And it wasn't about trombone playing. It was about brass playing, because he was a trumpet player, and he had a very unique approach to playing the brass instrument that he got from his teacher at Indiana University, Mr. William Adam. And that guy's like a legend. He just passed away a few years ago. He was like in his 90s, late 90s, I think, or something. Like, I got to have a lesson with him later on, and he was super cool. But anyways, it's kind of more of a Jedi approach to brass playing. And it could be thought of as controversial, but it works for me. But anyways, I know I'm kind of beating around the bush on your question, but on a technical level, if you can learn stuff from YouTube, that's fine and dandy. But both of these teachers that I had, they had experience. And sure, you can listen to podcasts, and you can do this, and you can go to clinics, and you can ask questions and whatnot, but it's much more. It's a deeper level of learning when you get to build a relationship with a handful of people, not just one person, but a handful of people. And this guy, Bob, he brought in a bunch of his colleagues that he had worked with over the years, and anything that he would tell us in class, he would be like, "Ask any one of these guys, and they'll tell you the same thing." And we were getting a university level education at that school, and I was able to pay for it myself because it was community college. And I had a job working at a grocery store bagging groceries, and that's what helped me pay for that. But like he was giving us a Berklee School of Music level, or USC, any university level. I'm not saying Berkeley's the best ever, but any university level education at that place. And he really pushed all of us really hard. Kind of like the movie Whiplash. Kind of like that guy, not so dramatic, but when he walked in the room, and you know how you watch the movie when the teacher walks in the room and everybody basically sits at attention? You felt that internally. You were like, okay, here we go. Like, who's going to get it today? Whoever did practice he's going to find you. He's going to find you. He's going to hear you, and he's going to find you, and he's going to ask you, "Did you practice?" And you're going to have to tell him you didn't, and he's going to ask you why, and you're going to have to tell him why. And it was an intimidating experience, and it was the movie.
It's a great movie. It's
one of my favorite films of all time. Yes, fantastic. Now, some people of today, like, younger musicians will think, or people, "Oh, he's so mean, and, that's not the way you teach people," or whatever. And yeah, there's some argument there. And there's one scene that people forget about in the movie. It kind of goes by unnoticed, but he talks about, I think he gets off the phone and he found out that one of his students had passed away. I think he committed suicide or something like that. And he talked about him. And I think what they probably could have done, I guess they didn't. No, it was probably good the way it was. But my teacher, I'll put it this way: my teacher, he would, if the band was sucking, he would let us know. And sometimes he was showing that he was not happy about it. And then he would sort of sum it all up and be like, you guys have no idea how hard it is when you get out there. When you get out there, you're going to wish you were back here. All you're getting from me is a little scolding or whatever, but out there, they'll just fire you and they won't say a word.
He sounds like an inspirational guy. What was his name?
Bob Slack.
Bob Slack.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Bob Slack.
My God. Yeah, that guy changed. He saved my life, literally.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, he was awesome. And there were some other teachers there. All the teachers there were great. I still keep in touch with all of them now. My trombone teacher there, Dave Beatty, was great. And then there's a drum teacher there named Alan Waddington. He was also a great guy. We still keep in touch, you know, yeah, it was a really, really cool experience. I spent about 4 years there. And my freshman year, my first year out of high school, we finally got a big band. We had enough. He was doing recruiting. He was going through all the high schools in the area and just grabbing people, because that was why he had that free jazz camp, was to be like, okay, I want to see whoever's interested in getting into this. I want to find him. And so that's why he had plans already. He goes, oh no, the first lesson's free. Like, you know, he didn't say that, but in his mind, he was like, yeah, we'll work it out. And
that's amazing.
So I wound up going there, and then, yeah, he had a big band and we were smoking. And after I left, it was smoking even more. So, and the program now, he had big plans, because, at the time, there was just a band room and a choir room and a bunch of practice rooms and a concert hall. And now there's a recording studio. There's more classrooms. They're teaching like everything, stage production and the whole nine. So he expanded that from just something so small into this ginormous, you know, program. So it was really cool to be a part of that. He worked his ass off.
It sounds like it. He sounds like an inspirational guy. I agree that it's like you say. I've heard conflicting things regarding Whiplash, but sometimes having that push just helps a little. You know, it brings out the best in a lot of people. Not everybody, but people like me definitely. I like being pushed. You know. Anyway, so after your studies, you end up eventually as a touring musician with quite a lot of pop, rock, ska kind of bands. You end up in No Doubts, who are a massive band. Tell me, if you wouldn't mind, how this opportunity came about for you.
Well, when I was studying at Citrus College, there was a trumpet player that I had befriended there. And funny story about this guy, I lived in another city, probably about driving on the streets about 30 minutes away. And I had moved to Glendora when I was 7 or 8 years old. This guy lived in my old neighborhood. It was near the City of Industry, this little tiny area called Valinda. It's between the City of Industry and La Puente. And so he lived literally around the corner from us, and he was older than me. But his little brother and I were in the same grade and class together. And on the way home, when I would walk home from school, his house was on the way home. So sometimes if we walked from school together, I would stop at his house and I would hang out there for a little bit. And sometimes his older brother would be there, and he would grab him and torture him and give him a noogie or give him a wedgie. And, you know, he was doing big brother stuff, you know. And I used to see him show up. You know, he would come home he was in probably junior high school and we were in elementary school. So when I got to Citrus, I got older, I left that area and I got to Citrus. He one day came to school and he brought this press kit with him, and he was like, dude, I just had a meeting yesterday with this band, And I go, really? He goes, yeah, there's this new band called No Doubt. And they got signed to this new record label called Interscope Records. And they want me to play with them. And of course, as you know, as a musician, you don't need a degree to get into the professional world. So I was just like, wow. And he showed me this press kit. And all I remember seeing was the Atlantic Records logo on the corner, which was a subsidiary. I guess they were distributing for Interscope at the time. And I was just like, wow, I was just so stoked for him. And I was like, dude, that's amazing. And I was like, so are you going on tour? He goes, yeah, we're going to go on tour in a couple of months and blah, 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 blah. I was like, this is awesome. And I was like, well, I'll see you out there. You know, like he left, and I didn't realize how the whole thing worked, because I thought he was just going to be gone and I wasn't going to see him again for, many years or something. But the tour was only like 3 or 4 weeks long or something. And he came back to school, and one day he goes, hey, do you remember that band I showed you? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, I was talking to the trombone player and he was thinking about leaving. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. So, when the time comes, do you want me to put your name in the hat? And I was like, absolutely. So once he played me their music, there was horns all over that first album. So I was like, dude, this is great. I'd love to be a part of this. And I had never heard of them before, and I'd never seen them play live before. And so he eventually their trombone player, Alex Henderson, he went down to South America. He was playing with a lot of Latin artists, Poncho Sanchez, probably the only one that comes to mind. I think he was only playing with Poncho Sanchez, but it may have been a few others. And he's a great player. He's a few years older than me, and he went down to South America, and at the time there were no cell phones and stuff, so he wasn't keeping in touch with the band and letting them know when he was coming back. So they had no idea when he was coming back. So they were like, well, we better get somebody else on trombone just in case. So they asked Phil if he knew anybody, and he says, yeah, I got a buddy of mine you should meet. So they invited me down to the band house, and I met them. They asked me what kind of music I listened to. And at the time, I was heavily engulfed in jazz. But at the same time, I was also listening to music of my time. And I was into a lot of things. And I didn't really know their history or whatever. So I just shouted out a few names. And, I think by that point I had been in a handful of mosh pits, and was hip to what was going on. And so, yeah, I just said, Red Hot Chili Peppers. I said Fishbone. I said Untouchables. Which were a local LA ska band, not quite as big as Fishbone, but they were known. They had, they had a thing. And I can't remember who else I mentioned, but I think that was enough for them to know, like, okay, this dude, like, I think I was even wearing a Living Color t-shirt when I came down there. I don't know why.
Amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, Adrian goes into his bedroom. He lived at the band house at the time, and he hands me a CD, and he goes, do you think you can learn these songs? And I came back in there a week later or so, and we rehearsed, and they were like, okay, so here's the deal. Our trombone player's gone. We don't know when he's coming back. This is his gig. But we need somebody to fill in for him in case he doesn't come back. And I was like, no problem. I'll be more than happy to do that. So, education was very important to me, and I hadn't been out of school since I started preschool. Tour dates they had arranged for were happening in the fall. They were in like September when school was starting. And I didn't want to stop taking lessons because there was a lot of things I still needed to learn. I wanted to be put in that position because I didn't want to lose what I had already gained, because bad habits can creep in pretty quickly if you're not, aware. So literally a week before we were going to do we were going to leave, Alex magically just appeared. He came back, and I got word, and they were kind of bummed. They felt bad for me, but for me, I was like, I was so relieved, that he had come back, and they felt bad. And funny enough, I was at the Lollapalooza festival that year, and I was hanging with my buddy, and I'm walking, and all of a sudden I hear somebody call my name, and it was Tony and Gwen. They were walking around Lollapalooza together, and they were like, "Hey," I'm like, "Oh, hey guys, what's up?" And they were like, "Dude, we're so sorry." And I was like, "Oh, well, you got my number, man. Just whenever you need me, just give me a call." And they were like, "Cool." And sure enough, some months later, I went to go see them. I finally got to see them play live. And I went to the merch guy, and I handed him my wallet, and I said, "Can you hold my wallet for me and my keys?" He was like, "Yeah, sure. Just put it in this bucket." And there was a bunch of other wallets and keys in the bucket, and I was straight in the pit. Watched the show. I was an instant fan. Bought the T-shirt, bought the sticker, and then I had already known them, so I came backstage, and that's when I actually met the trombone player Alex, and I think he felt like, oh, okay, this could be a good situation for me, because the other artists he was playing with, they were paying him more than No Doubt could. So he was like, this is going to be my sub, He looks the part. I think they like him. And then there was one time I went to a party at the band house, and, I brought my horn with me, and there was a room where there was some jamming going on, and it was a little bit more quieter because it was a house party. There was like a keg, and there was people everywhere, and some of us were wound up in this quiet room. I think we were in Eric Stefani's room, and then so me and Alex were kind of just playing a little bit and just sort of jamming, and he was like, "All right, cool," and I was like, "Wow, this guy's really good." And so we kind of got to know each other a little bit, and so I think he felt like if he left, he could call me, and he would be leaving them in good hands, which is really an important thing if you're going to get a sub. There's a fine line with getting a sub, and I've actually, knock on wood, I've never gotten a sub before. I've never had somebody. There's people that have subbed for me in certain gigs, but I don't have a go-to because my position is a bit of a unique one. I'm not a stock part of a car where you can just order one from the shop and it comes and you just replace it. This is like I'm the piece of metal that you fold and bend to make it fit with this machine. And when you take it off, it's not going to fit on any other machine. It can, actually, some cases it can, but there's not many. If you're a drummer, you're like, okay, that's just the new gasket thing or the new carburetor or whatever. Okay, yeah, we got that. We get a new one. You can swap out drummers, not to say that they're disposable, but you can easily swap out a drummer. Hey, our drummer broke his arm. We need a new drummer. Okay, call Josh Freeze. Okay, Josh will learn your entire set on the airplane ride and might make one or two mistakes, but you won't notice. And then you can get that guy to come in. But for me, there's specific things that I do that, that we might be rehearsing or playing a show, and someone might say, "Oh, dude, can you sing that background vocal line that comes in right before the bridge? The one yeah, I can get that. Yeah, sure, I'll grab that. Cool." So there's all these little specific things that I learn as we go on that, trying to teach that to somebody, it would be pages of, we would have to have a long conversation, and I'd have to go through the set, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, you got to catch that, and then this thing, and then, yeah, while you're playing this keyboard part, you only play with the right hand, and then you can do the right hand, and then you grab your trombone, and then you got to play on the downbeat of the next bar. Like, there's all these little things that it's not just, yeah. So anyways, going back to the No Doubt thing, he started using me as his sub, and it was working out great for him. And then eventually he started getting more work with the Latin artists and other people he was working with, and he just stopped showing up. And then I started learning some new songs. And I was like, well, you know, in order for him to get back in here, he's going to have a rehearsal with them to learn the new songs. And then one day we were playing in Vegas. We were on our way back, and we were unloading our gear at the band house, and he just showed up. And by this point, I'd been playing with him for like 2 or 3 months now. I'd done a handful of shows, and we've gotten to know each other. And, you know, it felt like we were a band, you know. There was 8 of us in the band at the time because Gwen's brother, Eric, was in the band, and we had a saxophone player, another Eric Carpenter. And so, yeah, we were an 8-piece. So anyways, we get back from this gig in Vegas, and he shows up. I don't know how he knew where we were coming or when we were arriving, but he just showed up. And for me, I was like, damn it, he's come back to, you know, find out when the next gig is or whatever. And they kind of like pushed him off to the side, and they were like, okay, dude, what's going on? Like, you know, they pulled him aside, I meant. And like, what's your deal? Because, you know, this is still your gig. You know, we told Gabe that this was your gig until you say this isn't your gig, you know, and which I respected, because I was like, if I was in that position, I would want the same thing. And he goes, oh, no. I just came by to say hi. This is Gabe's gig now. And they were like, oh, okay. Well, hey, Hugs, how you doing? Good to see you, blah, blah, blah. And then they came to me after that, and they said, I just want to let you know that Alex is he just told us that this is your gig now. And I was like, oh, all right, sweet. They're like, so
amazing,
you're the guy. And then eventually Eric Stefani quit the band. That was a big deal at the time. Then we had some gigs with no keyboards at all. And they knew that I could play piano, because anytime we were taking a break, I'd sit to the piano, and me and Phil would like do little piano trumpet duets and stuff, jazz stuff. And so they knew that I could play. And I actually did like an audition with them on the keyboards. And mind you, I'd never played any ska or reggae on the keyboard before. And I didn't even know how to program a keyboard. And so I just borrowed one from Citrus College and brought it down there, and the sounds in it were just totally whack, and they didn't sound good. And I was like, guys, I don't know how to use this thing, and I don't even know what the hell I'm doing, but I can tell you right now, I will figure this out. I know that for a fact, but right now it's not going to sound good. And so we went through a couple of tunes, and I was like, oh man, I was apologizing the entire time, but I was like, trust me, I will get this down, but just bear with me. And I think they may have an audition with somebody else, and then they decided to not do the keyboard player for a little bit, and then eventually Tragic Kingdom was done, and it was about to get released. And our first single was Just a Girl, which had keyboards on it. And so then Adrian was like, hey, listen, if we just got a keyboard, can you learn the Just a Girl song? I'm like, totally. So they got a keyboard. I grabbed the manual and learned how to program it. And this was just bare bones, didn't know what I was doing, trying to figure it out myself. I am self-taught on the piano. When I switched over to trombone, we had an organ in the house, and so I started messing around on the organ. And then a family friend came over and taught me how to play Heart and Soul. And those were the first chords I learned on the piano. I didn't know what they were called. I didn't know they were chords, but I knew that sounds like stuff I hear on the radio. And I knew that this was a happy chord, and I knew that was a sad chord, and that was a happy chord, and that was a happy chord. I didn't know it was a major or minor, but I knew what the sound was because I'd been listening to music so long. I was like, I knew, like, oh yeah, this is sad, and this is the happy chord. And I just learned how to play by ear. I just hear something and remembering it. And to me, it was no big deal. It was just something that I just did. No one sat me down. After she showed me that piece of music, I was like, okay, I got into the matrix and could hear the harmonies and hear everything and stuff. So I just worked on it. But anyways, I'm learning how to program the synths, and I got this Just a Girl sound that was god awful out of this vintage Keys sound module. And then I just started going to Tom. I was like, hey, what's the chords in Happy Now? I'm hearing the keyboard in the thing. He's like, oh, yeah, that's this and blah, 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 blah. I was like, okay, cool. So I started learning Happy Now. I learned Sunday Morning, and I learned, and then all of a sudden, like, I just became the keyboard player. That's basically how that happened with them. So, and we just continue to evolve from there.
It's incredible though. And I love the story with the previous trombone guy, because it's like, he just sounds so chilled, almost like, yeah, what happens. And you land up with the gig. I mean, look, you never know what's going to happen with the band, as I'm sure you realize. But like, I've been in enough bands to know that some people become so possessive of their spot, even if you're the depth guy coming in. So he sounds really chilled, good guy. Once that touring machine starts, especially once, say, Tragic Kingdom blows up the way it did, I imagine it runs like a well-oiled machine. So could you potentially share any kind of tour survival tips that you may have? More from not necessarily a physical health point of view, but just, when you're going on some of these tours, and I know that Tragic Kingdom just kept getting extended and extended and extended. What do you do for peace of mind? What do you do to stay sane? What do you do to just be like, oh man, I don't know what country I'm in. I don't know what city I'm in. I'm going a bit nuts. What do you personally do to just kind of woozah yourself,
You mean now, or what did I do back then?
Oh, well, either or. I mean, if you feel like you've learned from your experiences, which I'm sure you do, and you feel that what you know now would help people more than what you were doing back then let's say now.
Okay. Well, okay. So back then, everything was so new. I was aware of pitfalls, the big ones, drugs, addiction, alcohol, addiction, those things. I was aware of those, so I was very careful. And the band didn't really get into any of that stuff. So I was very lucky in that sense that there was no one in the band that was struggling with any addiction or anything like that. So it wasn't an issue. Everyone, we were all living at home with our parents pretty much. So as far as health goes, well, here's the funny thing about when we first got on tour, when we first got on a tour bus, we were gone the first time. I think it was like a month, maybe 6 weeks. We finished the last 5 Warped Tour dates of the first Warped Tour. And then we had a 2-day drive straight out to Knoxville or Nashville or something. And then we were out with 311. They were much bigger in the Midwest than they were on the West Coast. So we did this sort of trade with them where we would let them support No Doubt, and then they would let us support them in the Midwest at the time. And we were gone for a long, 6 weeks or so. And I remember we would have, I think after that, we had maybe a week or 2 off. And you first get home and you're stoked and you're like, wow, I'm home and I'm going to go to hit my favorite burrito joint, or, I'm going to go see my friends because you miss your friends and of course your family and whatnot. But after about close to a week, and we all talked about this, had the same experience. About a week into being home, you see your friends, you see your family, you've done all the things, and home is still home and still there. It ain't going anywhere. You go through this touring withdrawal, and you want to get back out there. You don't like, I couldn't put it to words right away, but I was like, kind of, you get this like post-tour depression. And I don't know if it's from, because I'll tell you right now, I didn't get into any of this because of screaming fans and people going, "Oh my God!" Like that's like a byproduct of what happens. I'm here for the music, and it's always been that way. You know, when I listened to an orchestra, I went, "I want to do that. I want to be a part of that." I know that's not. I love the sound that all those people are making. You know, whether it's a band or an orchestra or whatever it is, I want to be a part of that. So the fans and the girls and all the stuff, that's not what enticed me to do this. It was just strictly about the music. So, but yeah, and I don't know, maybe it's just because of the amount of chaos and noise and stuff around you, and maybe being in your early 20s and just having, it's exciting. Where are we now? Oh, we're in Seattle, or we're in Detroit, or we're here. And you're meeting new people, and you're meeting other bands, and they're doing the same thing. And it's almost, it's like a traveling circus in a sort of way. So you become part of this community. And then when you get home, you go back to the normal life, and it's great. You're like, well, stoked to be home. But then there's this new lifestyle that you're living, and you miss it. And so like, if we were home longer than a week, about a week into it, you start to get the touring withdrawal, and you want to get back out there. And I remember getting back out, and we were all so happy to see each other. We were like, yeah, we're back. Let's go, you know? And it was fun. And, you know, I don't really go through withdrawals when we're not playing, because I do get back into home stuff, and, you know, and it's great to be home, and it's great to be off. But now, when I go back to work, I have the same feeling. When I see my bandmates, I go, all right, we're back. Let's go. You know, missed you, bro. Yeah, I missed you too, man. Let's do this, you know? So it's something that it's taken me a long time to get used to, living the two lives. Yeah. And I have been doing it for so long that I am used to it. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's an adventure. I enjoy traveling. I get jet lagged, but it doesn't bother me. I know it's something that's coming, and, you know, you wake up at 3:00 in the morning. Like a couple months ago, I came from overseas, and I think I landed in the early afternoon, and I was staying at an airport, or at a hotel near the airport at LAX, because I had to fly to Denver. We were we were playing Red Rocks. Gosh, this was almost a year ago. And so I landed in the late afternoon. I went and got myself some food. And then I remember getting pretty tired after I got back to my hotel room. And now when I get tired and it's the middle of the day and I want to take a nap, I don't get under my covers. I will keep my clothes on, and I will lay on top of my bed, and I will set a timer for, okay, I need an hour, or I just need 20 minutes or whatever. And then I will, and I think I set it for 1 hour, and I woke, the alarm went off, and I leaned up, I looked around, and I was like, all right, I'm going to need another 30. And so I set it at 30 and went back down, and then I think I snoozed so many times, and I just went, you know what? Got up, went to the bathroom, brushed my teeth, took all the stuff off the bed, and just went under the covers, and I was like, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
And I went to bed, and I wake up on my own, no alarm, no nothing, and I felt well rested, and I had the curtains closed, and there was some sunlight coming in, I could see the sunlight coming from outside of the curtains, and I just lay there and I was like, oh man, oh nice, I really needed some sleep, man. I was feeling great and feeling all cozy and stuff, and I laid there in bed for a second, and I was like, what is it? Probably 6:30 in the morning or something like that. I'll probably go out for a walk, And I leaned over and grabbed my phone, and I realized that light coming through was not sunlight. It was the light from the parking lot lights. It's like 2:30 in the morning, and I was
man.
Yeah. So you deal with stuff like that, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess once I get back into doing shows, I don't know, I guess you just kind of go, it's worth it. For me, it is. And, I'm not one to complain about things, complaining doesn't really change anything. I mean, I guess it can if your your food comes back too spicy or something like that. But, if it's something you can't control, like the weather or, yeah, sure, I could get into figuring out how to reduce jet lag and prep myself, but I just deal with it and sleep when I can. And, I don't know. It's just something that I just kind of go, yeah, it just comes with the territory. It's like, if you don't like the noise, put earplugs in. You know what I mean? So I don't know. You just deal with it, So I don't know if that fully answered your question, but the touring life is it's not necessarily for the faint of heart. There's a lot of potential pitfalls that you can find yourself getting into, but I don't know. I look at it like a job, and there's different aspects of being on tour, and it also depends on who you're with too. So the people that you're playing with, their lifestyle. Some people like to party a lot. Most of the bands, knock on wood, I've been pretty lucky. Most of the bands, we know we've got this many more dates, and if you party, and I don't mean doing drugs, I mean just being out and drinking and staying up super late and being loud. It can be fun at times, but that definitely will empty your gas tank pretty fast. Then you're going to need something to prop you up. So, most of the bands that I've played in, we hang, and some nights we might, after the show have a few beers or whatever, but by 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, everyone's asleep, It's not loud. It's more of a hang, and we listen to music, and we talk about music, and we listen to stuff that inspires us, and it's a hang. It's not like party, and there's usually no outsiders. If there are, they're friends of somebody. And keeping your circle a bit tighter does reduce any mental strain too, because you're in a safe environment, and you kind of get to know each other a little bit better, and the music comes across better too because you spend time. It's a camaraderie sort of thing, and those things are extremely important to having a good, strong band.
I agree. Okay, so shooting forward quite dramatically.
Yep.
Eventually, no doubt, take a brief hiatus. And I know you touched on it in the intro. You played with some other bands. The one I want to ask you about is Green Day. You end up on the road with Green Day.
Yes.
I mean, again, just monstrous band. So, I know that once you're in those circles, like you say, it's almost like a traveling circus kind of thing, and you get to know everybody. Everybody kind of knows everybody. So I don't want to sound ignorant by asking, but how does the Green Day opportunity come around for you?
Well, we were on tour it was 96, and we were doing a radio show festival in Northern California, at the Shoreline Amphitheater. And I don't remember all the bands, but I remember No Doubt was on there. I remember Jewel was on there. Oh, man. I don't know why, but those are the only two bands I can remember right now. Two artists that I can remember. But anyways, we got off stage, and we had our bus driver was asleep, as they do during the daytime. And our tour manager had gotten our bus in a good position. And he said, okay, guys, after you guys are done playing, and we played during the daytime, and he's like, the driver's not getting here till like 10 o'clock tonight. So, you guys can just hang out. And there were plenty more bands going on. And so I was like, well, it's like, I don't know, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the early evening. And so I'm like, let me put my horn away and put all my things away back on the bus so I don't lose anything. And then I'm going to grab myself a beer and I'm going to hang out. So I pack my horn up and I'm taking it back to the bus, and somebody calls my name. Excuse me. They didn't call my name. They just said, excuse me. And I turn around. Billy Joe Armstrong. He goes, hey. And I'm like, oh, hey. He goes, hey, how you doing, man? I'm like, good. He goes, dude, you guys were awesome. I'm like, oh, thanks. And we started talking, and I said, I was like, hey, I'm just bringing this back to the bus. Why don't you cruise with me? And he was like, all right. So we walk on the bus, and I put my horn away, and I'm like, do you want a beer? He was like, sure. So we cracked open a beer and sat down on the bus and talked. It was just me and him. And he told me that his band was working on a new album. And I was like, awesome. He goes, yeah, we've been thinking about getting horns on the record. And I was like, dude, it's funny because he talked about this afterwards. And I, first got out there in this touring world, and I was like, I need to make some business cards, So I printed up some business cards, and I gave him my business card. Had my phone number on it, my home number, and yeah, that was about all it was my home number. And gave him my card, and I think he probably internally laughed, wow, no one's ever given me a business card before, So he was like, okay, well, this guy's pretty serious, he's safe.
Legit.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think he lost my card, but luckily their manager and No Doubt's booking agent, they started in the music business around the same time. And I think they were both working in the mailroom at William Morris Agency or somewhere. So they knew each other and they remained friends. And so a year and some change later, I get a call from our booking agent. And he goes, hey, I just got a call from Green Day's manager. They want to record with you? And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I thought they'd forgotten about it or whatever. And so I went, Steven and I both went into the studio with them. We were on the Tragic Kingdom tour with the whole set and everything. And we had just played 2 nights in Anaheim, and then we had a day off. And so, Steven and I drove over to Conway Studios on Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles and recorded a song called King for a Day. We did King for a Day, and we also, and Trey had this song that he had written, and it was called DUI. And the opening lyrics were, let's get drunk and go out driving. And it was like a mariachi style thing. And so we just kind of threw some parts over that. And they were really stoked because, we sat in the studio. They didn't have any ideas for the song. They didn't have anything at all. And so we sat there in the control room and listened to a few times, and I would sing a line, and they were like, "Wow, that sounds cool." And, so then we'd go out into the thing and play it, and I'd be like, "Oh, well, wait, let's tweak that. Okay, why don't you harmonize? Oh, no, I'll harmonize, you play the thing." And me and Steven worked out the thing, and they were just like, "Wow, these guys, like they were enjoying watching us do our thing." And so, we went in there and knocked it out. We had a great time. And I remember, I think, in another room, Mick Fleetwood was there, and we met him. Super tall dude, really nice guy, we got done with that, and I remember somewhere I had a cassette of. It was just a rough mix that and they printed a cassette, and I just wanted to hear, so the engineer printed one for me. Back then it wasn't really like a concern of like, oh, don't let this get, it was a concern, but like, not that I would have to actually hand that cassette to somebody and, they knew that I wouldn't do that, which I never did. And funny enough, I remember listening to that a handful of times and playing it for some friends and whatnot. And Billy's vocal track sounded just like it did on the record. And I remember him saying, "Oh yeah, that's just a scratch vocal." But I remember going, "God, it sounds like it's done." To me, it sounded like it was done. Because, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go back and re-record the vocals." I was like, "Oh, okay. I don't know what you need to fix, but hey, what do I, So the album comes out. And I remember talking to the manager, and I was like, "So what's going to happen with the other song?" He goes, "Oh God, that song's not going to see the light of day, man. Are you kidding me? Let's get drunk and go out driving." And I was like, "Oh yeah, of course." He goes, "It might pop up somewhere years down the road," and it actually did. It's on there. Yeah, exactly. It's like this bonus track. I think they did the 20th anniversary of Nimrod. And I think it's on there or something like that. Yeah, I think it is. And so, their manager calls me up, and they had done the first round of shows supporting that album. They first done round like a smaller tour. And there were kids in the crowd that were holding up signs requesting that song, King for a Day. So their manager, calls me and he goes, "Hey, I know you guys are making a new record right now, and I don't know if you have time, but they're getting a request for the song." And I'll go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, so the guys would like to take you out on the road." And I was like, so no doubt we were working on Return of Saturn. They were still in the writing phase, and I was showing up for the writing sessions and sort of working out some keyboard parts and kind of helping, do that. And so they had a run that was happening. It was like a month-long tour. And so I broke away from those sessions, and Steven and I went out on tour with Green Day.
Yeah.
And we had fun.
Yeah.
That was cool. Yeah. We played that, and we played they always do this Op Ivy song called Knowledge. And then we made some horn parts up to that. And so, we played on just 2 songs. And then we would incorporate some other things into the set. Of course, sometimes a kid would get on stage and, the kid would do a stage dive. And so, we would play Superman. And so we were kind of, getting ourselves in there and becoming a part of the show.
Yeah.
And I think they wound up getting costumes. And so I think I was a hot dog and Steven was a bumblebee or something like that. And then I think I became a banana.
As people are,
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, that's incredible. I know that you and I briefly, on our previous conversation, we spoke about your band. And I really want to get into this question. But again, time permitting, because I want to respect your time. So I want to talk about Oslo. I know you've got Oslo. I know you formed it, you launched it, etc., etc., etc. What I want to know is how hard it is to navigate your own project when performing in situations like Green Day, No Doubt, Sublime with Rome, you name it, Smashing Pumpkins, etc., etc., etc. I know that this is a tough road. I've been down this road, but this is not about me, and I never get to talk about these things. So you are the perfect person to talk to about this. What's the ups and downs when having your own project when you're in such demand as a side guy?
It is really difficult. It forces you to make difficult decisions because what I do for a living requires me to travel. There's no way around it. I can't phone it in. I can't send a sub because then I won't make any money, and I got bills. Yeah, it's really difficult to have a side project, especially when the other people are not doing what I'm doing for a living. Yeah, there's a bit of a disconnect. When I'm home, we have a lot of fun making music. It's great. It's awesome. We work on a lot of stuff. We work on a lot of music and write and produce our own music, and then we go do shows. But this business that we're in, things can change drastically like that. And we may have plans. I may have a month off. I may have a month off and may tell the guys, hey, I got a month off. Let's do shows. Or let's do some recording, or let's do whatever. And we may make plans to do something during 2 or 3 weeks out of that time. And all of a sudden, one of the people I work with, just a show pops up. It could be a festival. Singer in this band has throat problems, had to cancel their tour. They're looking for a replacement. They call, they get on the phone, and I get a phone call from one of the No Doubt guys saying, hey, we just got this gig in Cincinnati, for blah, blah, blah. And Oslo has shows booked, and I have a show that night. Or it could be anything. We're doing South by Southwest or anything like that. And I can't get a sub. I don't have a sub. I don't have a sub that's on standby that I can call, nor do I want to, because I need to make money. So I got to make the difficult decision to either cancel the show or tell them to find a sub for me in Oslo. And then they're, not happy about it, and they understand, they get it, but it's difficult. So I started the band after we were done touring from Rocksteady. Well, the band started before then, but when we started to get more active, I knew once we were done touring with Rocksteady, we were all sitting in a room, in the dressing room talking, and the question came up, like, what are we going to do now? We had the big success of Tragic Kingdom. Return of Saturn didn't produce as the sales that the label and had hoped to. And then kind of we had a bit of a redemption with Rocksteady. And now that we're on a high note, like, do we keep going? And, then the topic of Gwen going solo, which had been on the table for years.
Of course.
It was like, yeah, of course you're going to go solo. I mean, come on,
Any lead singer in any band eventually.
Yeah,
solo,
totally. So that was always like, yeah, dude, you should totally do that. Like, any one of us would if we were you, Yeah. And so then, yeah, that was the topic of discussion, and he was kind of like, yeah, you should totally do your solo thing now, and then she's like, yeah, I'll just make a record and do my thing, and I was like, all right, well, I've got probably a good year, to get this off the ground, and so I was like, all right, guys, all hands on deck, let's go. And No Doubt didn't have anything going on, and then of course, money starts getting tight, and Gwen had gotten an offer that was difficult to refuse, to do a live show. She was only planning on doing promo stuff, and then she got an offer to do, I think it was one show, and then she wanted to have a different band for that. And I got a call from her manager, and I told them I needed time to think about it. So Oslo, we were in the middle of trying to get our thing going, and then some time had went on, and I assumed that they had already found somebody for her keyboard player. And Tony calls me, and we're just talking. Goes, "Hey, are you going to play with Gwen?" And I was like, "Oh, probably not." I got a call from management about it, and I'm sure they must have filled that position by now, because it was like probably like a month prior or something like that. And I was kind of like borderline on the fence, and I had to make another difficult decision, which I will tell you about in a second. So he goes, "I don't think she's found anybody yet." And I was like, "Oh, dude, really?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Oh man, okay, all right." So I called management, and I said, "I just got off the phone with Tony, and he said that she hasn't found anybody yet." And he goes, "Oh yeah, we're still looking." And I was like, "Oh, dude," I was like, "Well, I don't want to leave her hanging like that. I thought, she would have found somebody by now." So, he and they were like, "Oh, you need to call our production guy who's working on this part." I call this dude up, and he goes, "Wait, you're calling me right now?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I literally just hung up with the keyboard player that we just hired." And I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, well, at least you found somebody, and that's fine, And he goes, "But you know what? There are so many keyboard parts in these songs. Let me talk to management, and we'll see. I don't see a reason why you can't do this anyways." And I was like, "Well, if it works out, it works out. If not, I'm here." So
yeah.
And I get a call from management, and they're like, yeah, good to know that you're there, and she's happy, and da 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 da. So yeah, we'll just have 2 keyboard players. I went on tour with her. It was about a 9-week, 10-week tour at the end of 2005, and then that closed out the year. Actually, side note, we were in production rehearsals, and we're taking a little break. I think they were working on some light stuff, and she's sitting out in the crowd area in the seats, looking at the lights, the lights and the video screen and whatnot, just watching everything to seeing how it's all going to look. And I'm kind of walking around practicing my horn, warming up and stuff. And she said, "Gabe," and I go, "What?" She goes, "Come here." And I go, "What? What is it?" She goes, "Dude," she goes, "you're not going to believe what I just found out." And I go, "What is it?" And she goes, "Sit down." And I'm like, "Uh-oh." And she goes, "Don't tell anybody. It has to be a secret." And I go, "Okay." And I go, "What is it?" She goes, "I'm pregnant." And I was like, "Oh my God." She goes, "I just found out I'm pregnant." And I was like, "Okay, well, what?" She goes, how are you going to, she goes, "I don't know how I'm going to do this tour." And I was like, "Whoa, okay." She goes, "I can't cancel it." And I was like, "All right." I was like, "Well, if you need anything."
Yeah, what do you do? Yeah.
Whatever. I don't know if you need something or whatever. She's like, "Yeah." All right. So it was kept under wraps for a while. And she, to get from to get from the venue to get to the tour buses, sometimes there's people from the crowd, fans that, want to say hi or take a quick snapshot or something or sign something.
Touch your face, play with your hands.
Exactly. I was talking to this woman, and she was probably in her early 30s or something. And we were getting towards the end of the tour. It was probably about 2/3 into it. I'll say about 4, 5, 6 weeks in. And she just went, "So, when's her baby due? And I was like, excuse me? And she goes, when's her baby due? And I go, what are you talking about? And on the inside, I'm like, what? You know, and she goes, oh, I can tell. She's pregnant. And I'm like, I probably, you know, she's like, and I was like, that's funny. Like, I mean, how can you tell that? You know, she goes, I'm a mom. She goes, I know these things. And I was like, well, hey, I don't know any of what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. And everyone's like, yeah, I mean, I don't notice anything either. I'm like, whatever. And I walked to the bus. And I'm like, holy crap, you know, because I could barely tell. She wasn't really showing, but somehow this woman, she knew.
Damn, huh?
And then a couple of, I can say this now, a couple of like weeks later, we were in the band, we were hanging out, and someone's like, yeah, Gwen's kind of like, you know, staying away from everybody, you know, these days. And she was at the beginning of the tour, she was kind of like hanging out with us a little bit more, but, you know, now she's kind of like being, you know, she's a little bit distanced herself and whatnot. And we're just kind of like going, yeah, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I don't know either, you know, and I'm just kind of over there drinking. And someone goes, yeah, she seems like she's put on a little bit of weight. I'm like, yeah, seems like, but she's always working out, and I don't understand what's going on. And I'm sitting there going, our drummer Zach, he has 2 kids, and so he knows how this stuff works. And he's like, yeah, well, she's not hanging out, she's not really drinking, she's putting on weight. And he goes, well, she could be pregnant. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, and he looked at me and he goes, and judging by Gabe's reaction, I could be right. And I was like, guys, don't say anything. And they were like, really? I'm like, yeah, just keep it under wraps. And they were like, okay, don't worry. And we were like, you know, 2 weeks away, you know, from the tour being over. And then she was going to make a big announcement after the thing was over. Yeah. But yeah, that was a little side story.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Then Little Kingston came out. Yeah, some months later.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah. Hey, Gabriel, I want to respect your time, dude. So I'm going to ask you one last question. It's a little bit of a loaded one. At least that's the response I typically get, because I ask all my guests this one. But, you know, take your time or answer as you please. What do you feel has been the best piece of advice you've ever received, or something you've learned along the way that's helped your musical career?
Okay. As a worker ant, as a working musician, there's a few things that I've learned from watching other people, and I've learned along the way. And it is, I attribute it to my intentions on being here, and that is more for me just to work. I just want to find work. I want to play music for a living. I'm not here for all of the extras that come with it. I'm not here because of the crowd and the screaming fans and whatnot. That's not why I'm here. I'm strictly here for the music. I mean, fans are great. I love the fans. Like I know some of them, and I communicate with some of them on social media, and you know, and I love. I mean, you know, none of us would be here if it wasn't for them. Yeah. So definitely have admiration and respect for them, and some of them are so dedicated to it. They do make their own pages dedicated to the bands that I've played in and stuff, and they follow me, and you know, they'll reach out to me and ask me some questions, and you know, if I feel that I can answer them, I will. If not, then I just say, I don't want to talk about that right now or whatever. But they don't really bother, and they're cool, you know. Anyways, some people I've noticed that are working musicians, they get a little confused, and they think they are the artist. And so there comes this sort of entitlement thing that they think that, oh, well, I'm supposed to get this and I need to have that. And they kind of turn into a bit of a diva. Now, again, I don't complain very much about things. I mean, there's certain things I will be like, okay, I think that this should be this way, or, you know, and I will ask for things and, you know, and see how I can get it to be more comfortable and livable for me. But, you here's what I've learned. There's 24 hours in a day. Typical band, headlining band, you're playing from anywhere from an hour to 2 hours on stage. So that cuts our 24 down to 22 hours. We'll add another hour in there for sound check. So we're now down at 21 hours. Okay. And let's take away 8 for sleeping. So what is that? 13 hours? Mm-hmm. Potentially 13 hours that you're going to be around these other people that you're working with. I don't care how good you are. If you're an asshole, you're not going to last long.
Yeah.
If you are an asshole, you better be so good that they're willing to put up with you.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, and my dad told me something. He didn't tell me this at a young age, but he said this to me. I was in my 20s when he said this to me. And it still echoes in my brain. And he asked me, he said, do you know who the person who's the best at their job, do you know who their worst enemy is? Or second worst enemy is? Other than themselves? The person who's good enough. And trust me, there are hundreds of people, thousands of people who are good enough.
Yeah.
And if you can bring someone else in that can play those parts, that's super cool. They would rather have the super cool guy because those 13 hours, no one wants to hang out with an asshole.
Yeah.
Just no. Yeah. No, thank you.
It's true.
And playing music is a very intimate experience, something that you don't understand until you do it. You learn each other's style of playing and the way they approach playing, and the bass player leans on top of the beat, so the drummer has to pull back, or vice versa. You hear someone making a mistake, and you can tell they're struggling with a part. You know their weaknesses, you know their strengths, and it always happens where the singer comes in too early, and everyone looks at each other like, "What are we going to do?" And we fix it because we're a band, and we want to make it sound good, and we want anybody to notice that we messed up. We want to justify the mistake that the singer came in too early or came in too late or whatever the case is. Or the bass player missed the cue or something like that. And we want to have each other's backs. And you want to have their back so much more when they're a cool person that you like. Because if they're an asshole, you might even take that opportunity to throw them under the bus. I wouldn't do that because that's not my style. But I would definitely fix it and make sure that they know, like, but that's never happened before. I've never, knock on wood, never have been playing with anybody that wasn't cool. I have worked with some bands where some of the people don't talk to each other, and that's odd, weird.
Yeah, super weird.
Yeah, very weird. Not the kind of environment that I want to stay in. Yeah. And the other thing that I've learned, and I kind of relate this to a car, right? Let's say you've got a car, it's an old car, and you need to drive from Los Angeles to Miami. So you jump in your car and you're driving down the freeway, the car's running great. Some point when you're getting through, I don't know, Arizona or somewhere, you start to notice a noise in the back kind of corner of the car. It's not necessarily an engine noise, but you're hearing this noise kind of appear, and you keep driving, and maybe it goes away, and and then maybe it comes back, and turn the radio down, and you're like, okay. So then you jump off the freeway, and you take a look, and you notice there's like a piece kind of rubbing against the wheel or something, and you sort of tighten the screw and hold this thing that's rubbing against the wheel, and you fix it, and then it comes back, and then you pull over to an auto parts store, and you find you get like a wrench or something, and then you tighten it in there. You make sure it's good and it's secure. Keep driving, and then all of a sudden you hear a similar noise, but it's in the other corner, and pull over and you notice that it's the same part that's connected, causing the noise. So then you realize that, I don't know, you see that the screw hole holding that side in, it's stripped or something's wrong and with it, and you realize that you can put another screw in there and it might hold for a little bit, but you realize that you're going to have to replace that part, right? That part is a band member, a hired band member, or a band member. Could be a full-time band member or hired, a component of this sound, right? And the noise is this person complaining, making way too many mistakes, showing up late all the time, whatever it is. Well, what happened? How come we missed this thing? Oh, well, it was because of this part. We had to pull over and fix this part. We had to adjust this part. Okay, so that's why we're late. That's why the car didn't show up on time, or that's why we missed the gig, because this part, this thing. So what do you logically do? You replace it.
Exactly, yeah.
So my thing, be quiet as a mouse.
Yeah.
If they don't notice you, you're doing a great job. The only kind of noise you want to make is, wow, who's that keyboard player you got there? Or who's that person back there? Or, man, your engine sounds great. Oh, yeah, man, we got a good group going on here.
Yeah.
That's the only kind of noise you want to be making is that. But, just stay quiet.
It's a great metaphor, actually. It's great. Excellent. Gabrial McNair. Dude, I know we ran over. Thank you so much for being so gracious with your time. I will put all of your relative links in my show notes. I can't thank you enough, dude. I love the stories. I didn't even get through half my questions. I'll have to have you back on at some point. But until then, nothing but the best for you, my man.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It was great to chat with you.
You too. Thank you. Okay. Well, there we have it. Gabrial McNair, everybody. I'd like to publicly say thank you to Gabriel for his time. As usual, I would like to publicly say thank you to each and every one of you for your time. I know I say it in every episode. I'm going to continue to do so, but please leave us a rating or review. It helps us tremendously. Also, don't forget you can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We're also trying little video clips on TikTok at the moment. We'll see how much longer we do that. My name is Travis Mark. This has been the Musician's Mentor podcast. Don't forget to check us out at musicians-mentor.com. For all other relevant information, check out the links in our show notes. Until next time, peace.